CEO's janitor was invisible to everyone until the millionaire saw her crying and broke his own rules. The most powerful CEO in Seattle had never noticed the night janitor until the night she held his company's darkest secret. Have you ever felt completely invisible in a room full of people? Like you could disappear and no one would even notice? Tonight, that invisibility was about to become the most dangerous thing in corporate America. But what she overheard in that bathroom would either save her life or destroy them both. Have you ever felt invisible? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She was clutching a blood-stained tissue and a secret that could destroy Seattle's most powerful tech empire. But all he could see were her tears. The most powerful CEO in Seattle had never noticed the night janitor until the night she held his company's darkest secret. Have you ever felt completely invisible in a room full of people? Like you could disappear and no one would even notice? Tonight, that invisibility was about to become the most dangerous thing in corporate America. But what she overheard in that bathroom would either save her life or destroy them both. The 42nd floor of Harper Tech gleamed under emergency lighting. Glass and steel reflected the city lights below like a crystal fortress. But in the corner beside the executive washroom, Seattle's most invisible employee sat crumpled against marble walls. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Zuri had worked these floors for 3 years. 3 years of mopping around expensive shoes. 3 years of emptying trash cans filled with more money than she'd ever see. 3 years of being nothing more than furniture to the people who ran this building. Tonight was different. She'd been cleaning the executive bathroom when she heard voices. 2 men talking about numbers, about cover-ups, about making problems disappear, the kind of problems that sent people to prison. Her hands trembled as she tried to clean up the broken glass. A water pitcher had slipped when she heard her name mentioned. Not her real name, they didn't know that. But they were talking about the night janitor, about what she might have seen, about what needed to be done. Blood dripped from her fingers onto the white marble. She pressed the tissue harder against the cuts. The voices had stopped 20 minutes ago, but she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the terror freezing her chest. That's when she heard footsteps, expensive leather shoes clicking against marble. Getting closer, she held her breath, praying whoever was would just walk past. Keep going. Pretend she didn't exist like everyone else did. The footsteps stopped. Are you hurt? The voice was deep, quiet, nothing like the angry shouting she usually heard from the executive floor. She looked up through tears and saw him. Elliot Crane, the man who owned this building, the man who fired people for looking at him wrong. He was kneeling beside her. For 3 years, he'd walked past her like she was invisible. Never a glance, never a word. She might as well have been a ghost mopping his floors. But right now, he was looking right at her, really looking. His gray eyes held something she'd never seen before in a powerful man's face. Concern, real concern. Let me see your hands, he said softly. She wanted to run, wanted to disappear into the walls like she'd learned to do. But something in his voice held her still. He wasn't talking to her like she was nothing. He was talking to her like she mattered. I'm sorry, Mr. Crane, she whispered. I'll have this cleaned up in. Forget the mess. He pulled out his handkerchief, pure white silk that probably cost more than her rent. What happened here? Drop a broken heart if you've ever felt invisible at work. Have you ever witnessed something you weren't supposed to see? Tell me in the comments. When he asked her name, really asked like her answer mattered, she almost told him the truth. Almost. Instead, she whispered, nobody important, Mr. Crane. If only she knew that by tomorrow night, she'd be the most important person in his world. He couldn't forget her face, or the fear in her eyes when she realized he'd been listening too. The boardroom buzzed with merger discussions and profit projections. Charts flashed on screens. Numbers danced across spreadsheets. But Elliot's mind remained fixed on tired brown eyes and hands that shook when she tried to hide evidence of her tears. Elliot? The Morrison deal? Marcus Webb's voice cut through his thoughts. His business partner was staring at him with raised eyebrows. The entire board was waiting for his response about a merger worth $200 million. He had no idea what they just asked him. Run the numbers again, he said, hoping it made sense. Marcus frowned, but nodded to the financial team. As presentations resumed, Elliot's mind drifted back to the night before. The way she'd looked so small against those marble walls. The blood on her fingers. The terror in her voice when she said she was nobody important. But it wasn't just her pain that stuck with him. It was the moment their eyes met. The jolt of recognition that hit him like lightning. Not recognition of her face. He'd never really looked at her before. Recognition of something deeper. Something that made his chest tight and his thoughts scattered. He'd spent 10 years building walls around his heart. 10 years of treating employees like numbers on spreadsheets. 10 years of walking past people like they were furniture. Last night, those walls cracked. 20 floors below, Zuri pushed her cart through empty hallways. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow looked like a threat. She'd barely slept, replaying those voices over and over. Replaying the moment Elliot Crane knelt beside her like she was worth saving. It had to be a dream. Men like him didn't notice women like her. They didn't kneel on marble floors to help bleeding janitors. They definitely didn't look at her the way he looked at her, like she was real, like she mattered. But the silk handkerchief in her pocket proved it happened. His initials embroidered in gold thread. Itchy. She should return it, but touching the soft fabric made her remember the gentleness in his voice. The way he'd wrapped her cuts without flinching at the blood. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk." Itchy. Her heart stopped. How did he get her number? How did he even know she had a phone? She looked up from the screen and froze. He was standing at the end of the hallway, still in his expensive suit from the board meeting. But something was different. His usual cold expression was gone. Instead, he looked almost nervous. "I've been looking for you," he said, walking closer. "Mr. Crane, the supply closet. 5 minutes." It wasn't a request, but it wasn't an order either. It was something in between, something that made her pulse race and her hands sweat. Have you ever had someone's face stuck in your mind after just one encounter? React with I if you know that feeling. The text message was simple. "We need to talk." Easy, but when she looked up from her phone, he was standing in the supply closet doorway. And this time, there was nowhere to run. The supply closet that smelled of bleach and desperation became the most intimate space either of them had ever shared. Fluorescent light flickered overhead as they stood between shelves of industrial cleaners and corporate lies. The small space forced them closer than either anticipated. Close enough that she could smell his cologne mixing with the sharp scent of ammonia. Close enough that when he moved, her heart hammered against her ribs. "What you heard last night," he said quietly. "Tell me exactly what they said." Zuri pressed her back against the metal shelving. This was insane. She was trapped in a closet with the most powerful man in Seattle, talking about secrets that could get them both killed. "I don't know what you mean," she whispered. "Yes, you do." His gray eyes searched her face. "That's why you were crying. That's why you were terrified. Someone was talking about you." She wanted to lie, wanted to pretend she hadn't heard Marcus Webb and another man planning to eliminate the night janitor who'd been asking too many questions. But something in Elliot's voice made the truth spill out. They said I'd been listening, that I knew about the offshore accounts, about the fake diversity reports. Her voice cracked. They said problems like me needed to disappear. Elliot's jaw tightened, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Who was with Marcus? I don't know. Someone with a deep voice. They mentioned names, government officials, people who could make investigations go away. She looked up at him with desperate eyes. "Mr. Crane, I swear I wasn't trying to spy. I was just cleaning." "I know." His voice was gentle now, protective. "You're not the problem here. They are." The way he said they sent shivers down her spine, like he was separating himself from whatever poison ran through this company, like he was choosing a side, and somehow, impossibly, he was choosing hers. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "You don't even know my name." Something shifted in his expression, something vulnerable that didn't belong on the face of a man worth billions. "Zuri," he said softly, "your name is Zuri Michaels. You're 28 years old. You moved here from New Orleans 3 years ago. You worked 2 jobs to support yourself and send money home to your sick mother. Her blood turned to ice. "How do you?" "Because I pay attention to people who matter." The words hung between them like a confession. She stared at him, trying to process what he'd just admitted. He knew her, really knew her. "I've been watching her." "People who matter," she repeated. "You think I don't notice the woman who works harder than anyone in this building? Who never complains, never asks for help, never takes shortcuts?" He stepped closer, and she felt the heat from his body. "You think I don't see how you handle yourself with dignity, even when people treat you like you're invisible? Would you trust someone with power if they promise to protect you? Or does power always corrupt?" Share your thoughts below. As he leaned closer to whisper his promise, she caught something in his eyes she'd never seen in a powerful man before. Genuine fear. Not for his company, not for his reputation, but for her. She agreed to meet him after hours, not because she trusted him, but because running had never kept her safe before. His corner office overlooked the Seattle skyline like a throne room of glass and ambition. But tonight it felt more like a confessional as she sat across from his desk, no longer invisible. The city lights twinkled 40 floors below while Elliot loosened his tie. The silk slipped through his fingers as he watched her take in his private space. Leather furniture that cost more than most people's cars. Art worth more than houses. Windows that made the world look small and manageable. But right now, with her sitting there in her cleaning uniform, nothing felt manageable. "Tell me about New Orleans," he said, settling into the chair beside her instead of behind his desk. She looked surprised. "Why?" "Because I want to know who you are, not just what you do." Zuri crossed and uncrossed her legs nervously. This felt too intimate, too real. Men like him didn't care about her past. They cared about what she could do for them. "You wouldn't understand," she said. "Your world and mine." "Try me." Something in his voice made her look up. Really look. The mask he wore during business hours was gone. In its place was a man who looked tired, lonely, human. "I had a full scholarship to Tulane," she said quietly. "Pre-Amid. I was going to be a doctor." "What happened?" "Hurricane Katrina happened. My family lost everything. I dropped out to work to help rebuild. By the time things settled, my scholarship was gone. The dream was gone." She looked out at the city lights. "I came here thinking I could start over. But it turns out being smart doesn't matter much when you don't have connections or money. So you became a janitor." "I became invisible," she corrected, "which was safer than being seen." Elliot leaned forward, studying her face in the soft light. "What made you feel unsafe about being seen?" The question hit deeper than she expected. She thought about her last relationship, about the man who'd promised to love her but only wanted to control her, about learning that sometimes the most dangerous place was in someone's spotlight. "Men with power," she said honestly. "They take what they want. They don't ask. And you think I'm going to take something from you? Aren't you?" She met his eyes directly. "This meeting, this concern, you want something. Everyone always wants something." He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rougher than before. "You're right. I do want something." He paused. "I want to keep you alive." The words hit her like a physical blow. Not because they were threatening, but because they were honest, raw, real. Have you ever had to hide your intelligence or education to survive? Drop a brain if you've been underestimated. When the elevator stopped working and security locked the building for the night, trapping them together until morning, she realized this wasn't a coincidence. Someone knew about their meeting. Being locked in a corporate tower overnight with Seattle's most ruthless CEO should have terrified her. So why did she feel safer than she had in years? The executive floor transformed after midnight. Shadows stretched across empty cubicles while city lights painted patterns on the walls, creating an intimate sanctuary 40 floors above the sleeping city. "Security override," Elliot muttered, hanging up his phone. "Someone locked us in remotely." Zuri felt her chest tighten. "They know we're here. They know something." He moved to the windows, scanning the street below. "But we're safer here than anywhere else right now." She wanted to argue, but where could she go? Back to her tiny apartment where anyone could find her? Back to streets where a woman alone became an easy target? "Here." He shrugged out his suit jacket and offered it to her. Air conditioning runs cold at night. The jacket smelled like expensive cologne and something else. Something that made her want to breathe deeper. She pulled it around her shoulders and felt surrounded by warmth that had nothing to do with the fabric. "Tell me about your mother," he said, settling onto the leather couch beside her. "Why do you want to know?" "Because you send her money every month. Because you work 2 jobs to take care of someone hundreds of miles away. Because that kind of love shapes a person." His words were gentle, but they opened wounds she kept carefully hidden. "She raised me alone after my dad died. Worked 3 jobs to keep us fed and housed. Never complained. Never made me feel like a burden." Zuri's voice softened. "When she got sick, I promised I'd take care of her the way she took care of me." "What kind of sick?" "Cancer. The kind that eats through savings faster than treatments. The kind that makes you choose between medicine and rent." Elliot was quiet, processing her words. In the dim light, his face looked younger, more vulnerable. "My mother died when I was 15, he said finally. "Cancer too, but we had money, best doctors, private hospitals, every treatment available." He looked at her directly. "It didn't matter. She died anyway. I am sorry. The point is, I know what it's like to watch someone you love disappear piece by piece. I know what it's like to feel helpless." His voice dropped. "But you're not helpless, Zuri. You're fighting. You're surviving. You're stronger than you know." The way he said her name made something flutter in her chest. Like it mattered. Like she mattered. She found herself moving closer to him on the couch. Close enough to see gold flecks in his gray eyes. Close enough to notice the small scar above his left eyebrow. "What happened here?" she asked, touching the spot gently. "Fell off my bike when I was 7. Required 6 stitches. You had a normal childhood?" "Normal enough. Before the money changed everything." Have you ever felt an instant connection with someone completely unexpected? Tell me about a time someone surprised you. Dawn broke through floor-to-ceiling windows as she stirred in his arms. But the sound of approaching footsteps in the hallway meant their secret was about to be exposed to the one person who could destroy them both. When his business partner walked in and found them together, the lie they told to protect her reputation became the truth they couldn't deny. The morning sun streamed through his office windows as Marcus Webb's expensive shoes clicked against marble floors. Each step brought him closer to a scene that would change everything. Zuri jerked awake in Elliot's arms, panic flooding her system. She tried to pull away, but he held her gently. "Stay calm," he whispered. "Follow my lead." Marcus appeared in the doorway with his perfect smile and calculating eyes. He took in the scene. Elliot's rumpled shirt, Zuri wearing a jacket, their intimate position on the couch. Well, Marcus said, stepping into the office. "This is unexpected." "Marcus!" Elliot's voice was steady, controlled. "You're here early. Emergency board meeting in an hour. Something about security breaches." His smile widened. "But it looks like you've been busy with other matters." Zuri felt heat flood her cheeks. This was exactly what she'd feared. Being discovered. Being exposed. Becoming gossip. "This isn't what it looks like," she started to say. "Really?" Marcus's eyebrows rose. "Because it looks like Seattle's most eligible bachelor finally found someone worth spending the night with." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Zuri waited for Elliot to deny it, to explain that she was just the janitor, that nothing had happened. Instead, he stood and moved to her side. "You're right," he said calmly. "I should have told you I was seeing someone." Zuri's breath caught. What was he doing? Seeing someone? Marcus looked between them with interest. "How long has this been going on?" "A few months," Elliot said without hesitation. "We've been keeping it private." "I can see why." Marcus's gaze lingered on Zuri in a way that made her skin crawl. "She's lovely." The pause before lovely carried weight. Judgment. The kind of assessment that reduced her to an object. "She's brilliant," Elliot corrected sharply. "And kind. And stronger than anyone I know." The fierce protection in his voice surprised them all, including Zuri. Marcus stepped closer, and Zuri instinctively moved toward Elliot. He wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her against his side. "Well then," Marcus said with that cold smile, "I suppose congratulations are in order." "Thank you," Elliot said. But Marcus wasn't done. "You know how rumors spread in this business. People will talk about the CEO dating the woman I love, Elliot interrupted. The words hit Zuri like lightning. He looked down at her with eyes that held no deception. No calculación, just raw honesty that took her breath away. Prove it, Marcus said suddenly. Excuse me, if you love her, prove it. Before Zuri could process what was happening, Elliot cupped her face in his hands. His thumb traced her cheek as he looked into her eyes. Trust me, he whispered. What started as performance became prayer as his lips found hers, soft and desperate. She melted against him, months of invisible longing finally finding voice in the way she whispered his name against his mouth. Have you ever had a fake moment become the most real thing you felt? Share your story in the comments. As Marcus's knowing smile spread across his face, Zuri realized their cover story had just made her the most visible and vulnerable woman in Seattle's tech world. Pretending to be his girlfriend was supposed to be temporary until she realized how much she wanted it to be real. The Fairmont Olympic Hotel ballroom glittered with Seattle's tech elite. Champagne flutes caught crystal light as she entered on his arm. No longer invisible, but spectacular. The dress he'd sent her was midnight blue silk that moved like water against her skin. Designer shoes that fit perfectly. Jewelry that caught the light with every breath. She looked like she belonged here, even though her heart hammered with each step. Breathe, Elliot murmured against her ear. His hand rested on the small of her back, warm and possessive. You're more elegant than half the women in this room. They're all staring, she whispered back. They're all jealous. His confidence in her was intoxicating. The way he looked at her, like she was precious, like she was his, made her feel beautiful for the first time in years. Elliot, a woman in diamonds, approached with air kisses and fake smiles. You must introduce us to your lovely companion. Sarah Blackwood. Meet Zuri Michaels, he said smoothly. Zuri, Sarah runs Blackwood Industries. Charmed, Sarah's smile didn't reach her eyes as she assessed Zuri from head to toe. And what do you do, dear? The question carried weight. In this world, your worth was measured by your job title, your connections, your usefulness. I'm in facilities management, Zuri said carefully. How practical. Sarah's dismissal was subtle but clear. Elliot, darling, I need to steal you for just a moment. Board business. She moved to take his arm, but Elliot stepped closer to Zuri instead. Whatever you need to discuss can wait, he said firmly. I'm exactly where I want to be. The rejection hit Sarah like a slap. Her perfect smile faltered as she looked between them with new understanding. This wasn't casual. This wasn't temporary. As Sarah walked away with wounded pride, Elliot guided Zuri toward the bar. You handled that perfectly, he said. Did I? Because I felt like a fraud. You felt like someone who doesn't play games. That's rare in this world. The bartender handed them champagne, and Elliot raised his glass. To being seen, he said quietly. To being real, she replied. They touched glasses, and the crystal chime seemed to seal something between them. A promise that this pretense was becoming something deeper. On the dance floor, he pulled her close. One hand on her waist, the other holding her fingers like they were fragile. They moved together naturally, like they'd been dancing together for years. This feels, she started. Dangerous, he finished. I was going to say perfect. His eyes darkened. That's what makes it dangerous. The music swirled around them, but all she could focus on was the way he looked at her. Like she was the only person in the room. Like she was everything he'd been searching for. Have you ever had to pretend to be someone you're not? How did it feel when people finally saw you? Drop a sparkles below. The evening was perfect until she overheard two board members discussing Elliot's cleaning lady and realized their secret was never secret at all. The corporate elite knew exactly who she was. They were just waiting to see how far Elliot would fall before they destroyed them both. The Harper Tech executive floor felt different now. Conversations stopped when she passed. Every surface reflected suspicious eyes. The invisible woman had become the most watched person in the building. They know, Zuri said, pacing Elliot's office while he reviewed security reports. They suspect, he corrected. There's a difference. I heard them talking. Wilson and Chun. They called me the cleaning lady who thinks she's a queen. Elliot's jaw tightened, but he didn't look up from his computer screen. Lines of code scrolled past, showing security access logs and employee records. Let them talk. Elliot, you don't understand. They're planning something. I can feel it. He finally looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her stomach drop. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't angry. He was scared. What aren't you telling me? She asked. Before he could answer, his office door opened. Marcus Webb stepped inside without knocking, his smile sharper than usual. Hope I'm not interrupting anything important, he said, settling into the chair across from Elliot's desk like he owned it. What do you want, Marcus? Just checking on our favorite couple. His eyes lingered on Zuri with predatory interest. How are you adjusting to your new position, my dear? The way he said position made her skin crawl, like he knew exactly what her real job was. Like he was enjoying her discomfort. I'm fine, thank you. I'm sure you are. It must be quite the change, going from invisible to infamous overnight. Marcus, Elliot's voice carried warning. What? I'm just making conversation, getting to know the woman who's captured our CEO's heart. Marcus leaned forward. Tell me, Zuri, what attracted you to Elliot first? His charming personality? His boyish good looks? He paused dramatically. Or was it the net worth of $4 billion? The accusation hung in the air like poison. Zuri felt heat flood her cheeks, but before she could respond, Elliot stood. Get out. Now. No need for hostility. I'm just concerned about potential complications. Out. Now. Marcus rose slowly, his smile never wavering. Of course. But Elliot, we should talk soon. About the Hartwell acquisition. About board confidence. About liability. When he reached the door, he turned back to Zuri. Lovely seeing you again, dear. I'm sure we'll be talking very soon. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like a trap snapping shut. He knows, Zuri whispered. He's fishing. No, Elliot, he knows. About my real job. About the conspiracy. About everything. She moved to the window, staring down at the street 40 floors below. People looked like ants from here. Small, insignificant, easily crushed. There's something else, Elliot said quietly. She turned to find him holding a USB drive. When you're in love, how far would you go to protect someone? Would you sacrifice yourself for them? Tell me your thoughts. The USB drive she found in Marcus's desk contained files that could save Harper Tech, or prove that Elliot had been lying to her about everything from the beginning. She thought she was protecting him from the board's conspiracy, until she discovered he was the conspiracy. The USB drive trembled in Zuri's hands as she stared at the screen in Elliot's penthouse apartment. Files upon files of evidence. Her own background check from 3 years ago. Employment records showing he'd personally approved her janitorial position. Financial transfers covering up the very corruption she'd accidentally discovered. You knew, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the Seattle rain hammering against floor-to-ceiling windows. You knew everything. Elliot stood frozen by his kitchen island, expensive whiskey forgotten in his grip. The man who commanded boardrooms with ruthless precision now looked like a child caught stealing cookies. Zuri, let me explain. Explain what? She spun around, fury blazing in her tired eyes. That you've been manipulating me for 3 years? That every conversation, every touch, every moment I thought was real was just... What? Research. Have you ever discovered someone you loved wasn't who you thought they were? That feeling when your world collapses in seconds? Drop a broken heart if you know that pain. The files painted a clear picture. Marcus Webb hadn't been a mastermind. He'd been the cleanup crew. The illegal layoffs, the buried safety reports, the insider trading that cost families their retirement savings. It all traced back to decisions made in Elliot's office. I was trying to fix it, he said desperately. Everything I did, hiring you, keeping you close, I was trying to make things right. By lying to me, her laugh held no warmth. By making me fall in love with a ghost. The words hung between them like shattered glass. This was the first time either had spoken the word love out loud, and it felt like poison on her tongue. Elliot set down his glass and moved toward her slowly, hands raised like she was a wounded animal. My feelings for you are real. Everything between us. Stop. She backed against the window, cool glass pressing against her spine. Don't you dare. Don't make this about feelings when you've been playing chess with my life. The USB drive contained security footage from her first week at HarperTech, video of her eating lunch alone in the supply closet, audio of her crying in the bathroom after a particularly brutal shift, evidence that he'd been watching her, studying her, long before their supposed first meeting. "You hired me because you felt guilty," she said, pieces clicking together. "The janitor whose husband died from asbestos exposure in one of your buildings. The widow with a child she couldn't afford to feed. I wasn't a person to you. I was a tax write-off. That's not, isn't it?" She scrolled through more files. Medical records for her son, school enrollment information, even her grocery receipts from the corner store. "You've been monitoring my entire life." The storm outside matched the chaos in her chest. 3 years of believing she was invisible, only to discover she'd been under a microscope the whole time. Elliot's face crumpled. "I fell in love with you. Whatever started this, whatever brought you into my life, what I feel for you is real. How can I believe anything you say?" As she walked toward the door with the USB drive, he called out words that stopped her cold. "If you leave with that, you'll never know why I really hired you as my janitor 3 years ago." The night janitor position was never random. He'd been watching her, protecting her, and falling for her long before she ever noticed him. Zuri's hand froze on the door handle. Behind her, Elliot's breathing was labored, like each word cost him something vital. 3 years ago, he began, his voice rough with unshed emotion. There was an accident at the Meridian building. Construction worker fell through faulty scaffolding. The man who died was named David Williams. Her blood turned to ice. "David, her husband. You think I don't know my own husband's name?" she whispered. "I was there that night," Elliot continued. "Not at the building site, at the hospital. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I'd seen the safety reports HarperTech's subsidiary had buried. I knew that accident was preventable." The USB drive felt heavier in her palm. She turned slowly, studying his face for lies. "I followed the ambulance because I had to know what my negligence cost." His voice cracked. "I saw you in that waiting room. 8 months pregnant, holding your belly while doctors told you David was gone. Have you ever had someone watching you during your worst moment? Someone witnessing your pain before you even knew they existed? Tell me how that makes you feel." The memory hit her like a physical blow. That night in the ER, feeling like the world had ended. She'd been so lost in grief. She wouldn't have noticed if the governor himself had been sitting across from her. "I watched you for hours," Elliot said. "Watched you call your mother, tell your boss you couldn't come to work, figure out how to pay for a funeral with $17 in your checking account. You never cried. Not once. You just handled it. So you decided to handle me? I decided to help you." He stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. "The life insurance payout that covered David's funeral? That came from my personal account. The back pay settlement from his employer that kept you fed during your pregnancy? Also me." Her knees threatened to buckle. "You're lying. Check the financial records on that drive. You'll find anonymous donations matching every major expense you couldn't cover. Your son's medical bills when he was born premature, the down payment for your apartment, even the car repairs last winter." The room spun. 3 years of believing she'd survived through her own strength, only to discover she'd had a guardian angel in an expensive suit. "When you applied for the HarperTech position," he continued, "I made sure you got it. Not out of guilt, though God knows I had plenty, but because I'd been watching you for 8 months and I'd never seen anyone fight so hard to build a life from nothing. You had no right. I had every right." His mask finally slipped completely. "My company's negligence killed your husband. I had the right to try to fix what I broke." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Outside, Seattle's skyline glittered through rain-streaked windows, beautiful and cold. "The security footage from 3 years ago," he said quietly, "shows something you forgot. The night you almost didn't make it home safe. Remember the car that followed you?" Her breath caught. That night, after her double shift, when footsteps had echoed behind her in the parking garage. "That was my car, Zuri. I've been protecting you all along." Marcus Webb had been playing chess while they thought they were playing house. And now he was ready for checkmate. The USB drive slipped from Zuri's numb fingers, clattering against the marble floor of Elliot's penthouse. 3 years of her life, 3 years of what she'd thought was independence, had been orchestrated by the man standing 10 feet away. "You've been my puppet master," she said, her voice hollow. This whole time, before Elliot could respond, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. Marcus Webb's name flashed on the screen, and something cold settled in Zuri's stomach. "Don't answer it," she said, but Elliot was already swiping to accept. "Marcus what? Touching reunion, I'm sure." Marcus's voice filled the room through the speakerphone. "Though I have to say, I'm disappointed you're only figuring this out now, Ms. Williams." Zuri's blood froze. How was Marcus listening to their private conversation? Surprise? Marcus chuckled. "Elliot's apartment has been monitored for months. Every kiss, every whispered secret, every passionate encounter, all recorded for posterity." Elliot grabbed the phone, jabbing at the screen to disable speaker mode. But Marcus's laughter continued to echo. "Oh, leave it on speaker. She deserves to hear this part. Have you ever realized you were being watched during your most intimate moments? That violation, that complete loss of privacy? Share your thoughts below if you felt that invasion." "What do you want, Marcus?" Elliot's voice was deadly quiet. "What I've always wanted. Harper Tech's complete collapse. See, while you two were playing Romeo and Juliet, I've been building a case that will destroy both of you." The penthouse suddenly felt like a cage. Zuri wrapped her arms around herself, trying to process the scope of their manipulation. "The board knows about your 3-year obsession with the cleaning lady," Marcus continued. "They know about the financial transfers, the surveillance, the emotional manipulation. Most importantly, they know about the son." Zuri's heart stopped. "What son?" "Your 8-year-old boy, of course. Sweet kid. Walks to school every morning at exactly 7:42 a.m. Takes the same route through Meridian Park. Terror clawed up her throat. "If you touch him..." "Oh, I won't touch him," Marcus said smoothly. "But accidents happen. Construction sites are dangerous places. Just ask David Williams." The blood drained from Elliot's face. "Marcus, don't." "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus interrupted. "Tomorrow morning, both of you will resign from Harper Tech in disgrace. Elliot, you'll transfer your shares to me for pennies on the dollar. Compensation for the emotional distress you've caused this poor woman. And Zuri, you'll disappear. Leave Seattle. Take your son and never contact Elliot again. And if we refuse..." Zuri's voice was steadier than she felt. "Then little Marcus Jr. Oh yes, I know you named him after his father. Might have a very unfortunate encounter with some of my less savory business associates." The world tilted. Her son, her baby, the one thing in her life that Marcus couldn't know about, shouldn't know about. "Ow," she whispered. "Did you really think Elliot was the only one watching you? I've been monitoring his obsession for years. Every background check he ran, every financial transfer he made, every private investigator he hired to keep tabs on your family. The hit squad Marcus hired to eliminate her wasn't just after Zuri. They were coming for anyone who knew the truth, including the son she'd thought she'd hidden from everyone. She'd kept her child's secret to protect him. But now that secret was the only weapon Marcus needed to destroy her completely. Zuri's legs gave out. She sank onto Elliot's leather couch, the weight of Marcus's threat crushing her chest like a physical blow. Her son, her Marcus, named after her grandfather, not knowing he shared a name with a monster now threatening their lives. "Marcus Jr.," she whispered, the name bitter on her tongue. "You think my son is named after you?" Through the phone speaker, Marcus's laughter was cold as Seattle rain. "Isn't he? Your husband's middle name was Marcus. Simple mathematics, really." The coincidence felt like fate's cruelest joke. Her beautiful boy, innocent and unaware, now caught in a web of corporate greed and adult lies. Elliot was already moving, grabbing keys and his jacket. "We're getting him now." "Oh no," Marcus said. "You're staying exactly where you are. My associates are already positioned at his school, his after-school program, even your mother's apartment where he stays on weekends. One wrong move, and..." "What do you want?" Zuri stood on shaking legs. "Money? I don't have any." "Silence? I'll give you whatever you need." I want Elliot Crane to suffer the way I've suffered." Marcus's voice turned vicious. "Do you know what it's like watching your best friend, your business partner, throw away everything for some cleaning lady's trauma response?" The words hit like a slap. Trauma response. As if her love, her pain, her entire existence was just a psychological reaction to be dismissed. What would you risk to protect your family? Would you trust someone new with your child's safety? Drop a shield if you do anything to keep your kids safe. 3 years I've watched him obsess over you," Marcus continued. 3 years of him making stupid decisions, jeopardizing our company, all because he felt guilty about your dead husband. Well, guilt doesn't pay shareholders, and obsession doesn't build empires. Elliot's hands clenched into fists. This was never about the company. Everything is about power, Elliot. You just forgot that when you started thinking with parts of yourself that don't belong in boardrooms. Zuri's phone buzzed. A text message with a photo that made her knees buckle. Her son, walking out of Roosevelt Elementary, his Iron Man backpack bright against the gray Seattle afternoon. In the background, barely visible, a black sedan with tinted windows. "As you can see," Marcus said, "my reach extends beyond corporate surveillance." The photo was time-stamped 15 minutes ago. Her son should be at after-school care, safe with Ms. Rodriguez and 20 other kids. But there he was, alone on the sidewalk, completely vulnerable. "The beautiful thing about children," Marcus continued, "is how trusting they are. A stranger offers candy, claims to know mommy, says there's an emergency. They'll follow anyone." Zuri was already grabbing her jacket, but Elliot caught her arm. "That's exactly what he wants," Elliot said quietly. "You running scared, making mistakes." "My son, our son," Elliot corrected, and something in his voice made her stop. "Because if we're doing this, if we're fighting this together, then everything that matters to you matters to me." The FBI raid on HarperTech was supposed to end their nightmare, until they realized Marcus had one final card to play, and this time, he was taking everyone down with him. When the FBI stormed HarperTech, they weren't just arresting criminals. They were dismantling an empire built on silence and secrets. The federal agents hit HarperTech headquarters at dawn like a perfectly choreographed storm. 27 floors of corporate power reduced to chaos in minutes. Computers seized, files confiscated, executives led away in handcuffs, while news cameras captured every humiliating second. Zuri watched from the coffee shop across the street, her son's small hand gripped tightly in hers. Marcus Jr., her Marcus, pressed his face against the window, fascinated by the flashing lights and serious-faced people in navy windbreakers. "Is that where you work, Mama?" he asked. "Not anymore, baby." 3 hours earlier, she and Elliot had walked in the FBI field office, carrying the USB drive and 3 years' worth of financial records. Agent Sarah Chun had listened to their story with a practiced calm of someone who'd seen corporate corruption destroy lives before. "We've been building a case against HarperTech for 18 months, Agent Chun had explained. "Your evidence gives us what we need for arrests." But Marcus Webb wasn't at HarperTech when the agents arrived. He was sitting in his Mercedes outside Marcus Jr. School, watching 8-year-olds play during morning recess. Would you risk everything to expose the truth, even if it meant losing everything you built? Tell me what justice means to you in the comments below. Zuri's phone buzzed. Marcus calling, his voice tight with rage when she answered. "You have no idea what you've done." "I've done what I should have done 3 years ago," she said. Told the truth. Through the coffee shop window, she watched FBI agents leading HarperTech CFO toward a waiting van. The man who'd approved her husband's project, who'd buried the safety reports that cost David his life, now faced federal charges. "The feds might have HarperTech," Marcus said, "but they don't have me, and they definitely don't have your son." Ice flooded her veins. "What?" "Turn around." She spun in her seat. Across the street, parked beside Roosevelt Elementary's chain-link fence, Marcus Webb sat in his silver Mercedes. Even from a distance, she could see his predatory smile. "One phone call," he said through the speaker. "One word to my associates, and her boy joins his daddy in the ground." Marcus Jr. looked up from his coloring book. "Mama, you're shaking." She was. Her entire body trembled with the effort of containing her terror. But alongside the fear, something else burned: fury. Pure, protective rage at the man who dared threaten her child. "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus continued. "You're going to call Agent Chun and tell her you lied about everything. You're going to destroy any copies of that evidence, and you're going to disappear from Seattle forever. And if I don't, then you'll discover exactly how creative my associates can be with construction accidents." But Zuri wasn't listening anymore. Because walking up behind Marcus's Mercedes, moving with the deadly precision of trained professionals, were 4 FBI agents. Agent Chin's voice crackled through her earpiece, the wire they'd fitted her with that morning finally paying off. As Marcus was led away in handcuffs, his final words sent ice through her veins. "You think this ends with me? You have no idea how deep this goes." Rebuilding Harper Tech meant more than restoring a company. It meant creating the kind of workplace where people like her were finally seen. 6 months after the FBI raids, Zuri stood in what used to be Marcus Webb's corner office, now transformed into the Harper Tech Employee Advocacy Center. Gone were the intimidating leather chairs and cold marble surfaces. Instead, comfortable seating areas and warm lighting created a space where workers could speak freely without fear. "Mom, can I use the big conference room for my science project?" Marcus Jr. poked his head through the doorway, his Iron Man backpack sliding off one shoulder. "Ask Mr. Crane," she said, smiling. "It's his building, too." Her son grinned and disappeared down the hallway, his voice echoing as he called, "Elliot, can I borrow your fancy room?" The sound of her child's laughter in these halls still felt surreal. Harper Tech had become more than a workplace. It had become home. Have you ever been part of changing a toxic environment? What would your ideal workplace look like? Share your vision below, and let's build something better together. The transformation hadn't been easy. Federal investigations, media scrutiny, and financial restructuring had nearly destroyed the company. But from the ashes of Marcus's empire, something unprecedented had emerged. A corporation that actually served its employees instead of exploiting them. Zuri's official title was Director of Worker Relations, but her real job was simpler, making sure no one ever felt invisible again. The janitorial staff now had health insurance and college tuition assistance. The cafeteria served meals from local minority-owned restaurants. Childcare was provided on-site, free of charge. The board meeting went well, Elliot said, appearing in her doorway with 2 cups of coffee. They approved the expansion of the advocacy program to all satellite offices. She accepted the coffee, their fingers brushing in the familiar gesture that still sent warmth through her chest. And the union vote passed unanimously. Congratulations, you just unionized one of Seattle's biggest tech companies. 6 months ago, the idea of Harper Tech employees having collective bargaining power would have been laughable. Now it felt like common sense. Your son is giving a presentation to the marketing team about sustainable packaging, Elliot added, settling into the chair across from her desk. Apparently, his 3rd grade class has strong opinions about corporate environmental responsibility. Zuri laughed. He gets that from his father. The words hung in the air between them. Not David this time, though her first husband's memory remained precious. But Elliot, the man who'd fought alongside her to rebuild everything they'd lost, who'd chosen truth over profit, who'd become the father Marcus Jr. had never known he needed. Speaking of fathers, Elliot said quietly, "There's something I want to ask you." Her heart skipped. They'd been building toward this moment for months, their relationship deepening as they worked together to transform Harper Tech from the inside out. But before he could continue, her phone buzzed with a text that made her blood freeze. A photo of a positive pregnancy test sent from her own number. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I don't have my phone." Elliot was already moving, but they both knew the truth. Someone else had sent that message. Someone who knew exactly where to find them. The pregnancy test in her hand showed 2 pink lines, but before she could tell Elliot, the phone rang with news that would change everything again. 5 years ago, she was invisible in his building. Today, she was announcing their engagement on the same floor where he first saw her tears. The Harper Tech atrium buzzed with celebration as employees gathered for the company's 5th anniversary of restructuring. Zuri stood at the podium where Marcus Webb once delivered speeches about profit margins and market dominance. Today, she spoke about dignity and second chances. 5 years ago, she began, her voice carrying across the crowd. I cleaned these floors at 2 in the morning, invisible to everyone who walked past. I never imagined I'd be standing here as your colleague, your advocate, and your friend. Applause rippled through the atrium. She spotted Marcus Jr. in the front row, now 13 and taller than her shoulder, grinning with pride. Beside him sat their daughter, 3-year-old Elena, whose existence had once been a threatening message but was now their greatest joy. What does it mean to truly see someone? How has love changed the way you view the world? Share your transformation story below. I read every single comment. The pregnancy test that had terrified them 5 years ago hadn't been a threat after all. It had been a gift discovered at the perfect moment, when they were finally ready to build a family together without secrets or fear. Change doesn't happen overnight, Zuri continued. It happens when people decide that everyone deserves to be seen, heard, and valued. It happens when we choose courage over comfort. In the audience, she spotted former Harper Tech employees who'd found new careers after the federal investigation. Some had started their own companies. Others had become advocates themselves. A few had simply found peace in honest work at places that respected their humanity. Today marks not just Harper Tech's transformation, but all of ours, she said. We learned that the most powerful force in business isn't profit, it's people. The presentation screen behind her lit up with photos from the past 5 years. The employee childcare center where Elena had taken her first steps. The community garden on the roof where workers grew vegetables during lunch breaks. The scholarship program that had sent dozens of employees' children to college. But the final image made the audience gasp. A photo of the old executive bathroom where she'd once cried alone, now converted into a meditation room with comfortable chairs and soft lighting. A place where anyone could find peace during difficult moments. This room, Zuri said, her voice soft with emotion, represents everything we've built together. A space where struggle is acknowledged, not hidden. Where healing is encouraged, not discouraged. Elliot stood at the back of the crowd, their daughter on his shoulders, watching his wife command the room with the same grace that had first captured his heart. When she finished speaking and stepped down from the podium, he was waiting with a kiss that tasted like promises kept and futures built on truth. Ready for the big announcement? He whispered. She nodded, her hand finding her growing belly where their second child was safely developing. This pregnancy planned and celebrated, not discovered through threats. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about love that transforms not just hearts, but entire worlds. Comment below, what invisible person in your life deserves to be seen? And remember, the most powerful love doesn't just change two people, it changes everything they touch.